Hello, and welcome to another video. In today's video, if you haven't already been able to tell, it is going to be about fairies. More specifically, fairy-related, repellent. Very specifically, fairy repellent. Now, I know you're probably thinking, is there such a thing? I don't know. But it is my aim to undergo sort of an R&D process and make one. I'm specifically trying to come up with a fairy repelling incense. And yeah, that sounds like a kind of a crazy little thing. In fact, when I first wondered if it was possible to do such a thing, it popped into my head. I do believe I was reading a blog. I don't know if it was an excerpt being shared from the author's book, the author being Morgan Daimler, who is a folklorist, a fairy priestess, a witch, and I believe psychic sensitive. So, you know, she's a bit of an authority on otherworldly figures. Anyway, she, in whatever manner of post it was that I was reading, she was theorizing about iron, which anyone who knows anything fairy-wise in regards to things that can protect one from fairies, it's, at least some of them seem to have an aversion to iron. And she was speculating, since it does seem that the way they can move things and are sometimes like physically, or at least they look to be physically present when people have encountered them, that perhaps their aversion to iron might actually be something that affects whatever manner of physical nature they have. Really more of a liminal nature, because they're not quite spirits, but they're definitely not as solid as everything else that we share our planet with. And that just seemed just a very novel idea, that because there's so much in fairy lore that a lot of it's charms and superstition, and it's really hard to tell what might have been a genuine nugget of paranormal truth, or, you know, what was just someone hoping a charm or superstitious thing would save them. It was then I got to thinking, well, if iron might affect them physically, well, because, you know, obviously if you're dealing with angry fairies around your house, not everyone just has iron laying about. Although the prevalence of cast iron cookware and things sort of regaining some popularity, that might help. There might be a few more folks out there that might run afoul some angered fae folk that do have at least one cast iron pan in the kitchen. Although being able to hit them over the head, or, I don't know, defend yourself from them, that still might be a little tricky. So as I was saying, I got to think, well, if iron affects them physically somehow, well, what if there's some plants? What if there are things in the plant world that have ill effects upon or at least some denizens of the fairy realms? Well, and then comes trying to find the folklore. And although I will say, when I was double checking some things just the other day before doing this video, actually, as I already shot the video, I thought it probably would be good to go back and try to double check my sources, a couple of which I have since misplaced. But there was a lot more things when I started searching the internet, and I'm going to have to dive further in, but there was way more mention of herbs and plants that the fairies find disagreeable. And of course, plenty of other stuff saying how they really delight in some of those exact same plants that another source was saying that they don't like. So I will have my interesting work cut out for me just to dive further in. But the herbs that I did come across that seem to be a fairy repellent: St. John's wort, well, I have red clover. That's what I'm going to use, because the first source that I found was very unspecific. It just said clover. And then I've just seen sources specifying that it's 4-leaf clover. So the superstition and stuff is going to blur it all together. And well, I might just give it a best go with the red clover and leave the real sleuthing to the people who are far more interested in fairy specifics than I. Or maybe if I can get a hold of enough 4-leaf clover for incense. That just does not seem possible without. Although I'm sure somebody out there has figured out how to genetically start just growing 4-leaf clovers. So science might actually endeavor to help paranormal matters again. So there's St. John's wort, the clover, and dragon's blood resin, which that came about as I was in the spooky forums on Reddit, and there just happened to be a couple of fellows from some parts of the geographic Middle East area that were talking amongst themselves about jinn, which I'd already had the theory just from bits of folklore that I looked into, that the jinn, a lot of their behaviors and tendencies were very much fairy-like. And it just so happened that as these two fellows were discussing the jinn amongst themselves and how they had been taught to deal with them, iron came up, which I found to be very interesting. And then they mentioned, and both agreed upon, dragon's blood was another thing that they were taught as a jinn deterrent or ward. So that is also going to be going into my incense, as well as juniper, juniper berries specifically, just because they're very resinous and they just help give it a bit more body and help things stick together in the incense, as well as a little bit of honey, which is used sometimes in loose incense, again, just to help as a binder and keep all the dry ingredients together. And the final thing that I am going to toss in is a little bit of iron powder, just in case the hot metal smoldering along with the herbal additions. Because if you've ever let a pan get hot enough, or if you live somewhere like I did growing up outside of a town that has a foundry, yeah, hot metal definitely can have a very oppressive odor. So that's going in, because maybe just the smell of hot iron will be enough to deter fairies. And yeah, so I am going to get on with mixing it up and give it a trial light and see how pleasant, or, well, dragon's blood kind of smells funky in and of itself anyway, so it's definitely going to be a utilitarian incense. Okay, now to get on with the preparation. I really don't know what order to put this together in, so I am going to start with the dragon's blood, and a little of this goes a long way of fun to break up in here. Somewhere online. There's probably those just those videos, just people watching somebody grinding stuff up in a mortar and pestle. But at which point is it going to be just right, and which point am I going to blink and suddenly it's all powder? Okay, that is probably good. And now for the juniper, which I don't often dip into sympathetic magic things, but I just did quickly, just out of curiosity, just to see things that juniper is used in. Thanks to have it on hand. Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. He also does actually gives medicinal information about the herbs also. But I don't often do sympathetic magic, but I thought I would look. And juniper does have uses in protection, which this is definitely a protection incense. So that works out, just beyond the utility of having a little something in there to help act as another binder. Also, juniper in the kitchen, I like to use it, grind it up and use it as part of a dry rub for pork. It works very well. And those of you who aren't fans of juniper because you encounter it in gin, it is much different when you cook with it. It does not taste like you are cooking with a pine tree. At least nobody who doesn't enjoy gin that I know has never complained that my dishes have tasted like they are full of pine trees. Okay, now near the red clover a little, because there are some larger flower buds still in this. Okay, I think the St. John's wort is good in and of itself. So now to mix them all up, and I've got some of my really tiny, ill-fitting vinyl gloves, which I wonder how many pairs I'm going to have to go through by the time I get one on. Okay, one of two, and I am begloved, and no tears yet. Okay. Now I am not sure how to put this together. My little spoon. That will be handy for the iron. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer it, because the juniper is fairly, well, I'm going to trigger some of you. The juniper is fairly moist because, well, that's the word, that's what it is. It's still rather resinous, so I think I'm going to put some of that in at the bottom to try to catch some of the finer things that I don't want to manage to slip straight through the dry stuff. Okay, so I'll do that. Little St. John's, little clover, dragon's blood. Getting to the tricky part. Little honey. Okay. Hopefully that is not too much honey, because that is a new bottle, so it is very liquidy and. Okay. Now this is where I feel like a scientist. Little iron powder. Which Well, once I remember exactly where I got it, I will put a link in the description in case you need iron powder yourself for anything. And it's iron powder, not iron oxide. I would like to see the process they go through to make iron powder. But not iron oxide, because initially I was going to use iron oxide. Quite conveniently, because I had a little that I was saving up for. Well, I'm still saving, because from what I scraped off a cast iron pan that I was reconditioning, I ended up with quite a bit of iron oxide powder just from the old pan. But not iron oxide, because I had the mind to think, well, it's got an oxide, so it might just be kind of flammable, because it is half of what goes into making thermite. And while your incense wouldn't have been thermite, it might have burned hotter than you would want it to. And thus, I replaced it with iron, and I feel a lot better about the decision. Put some more juniper in there, because the iron does not like to stick to anything. So we are going to try to wrangle that iron. Dragon's blood. St. John. And just a little sprinkle more of the iron, because I probably got plenty. Maybe. I don't know. Is a fairy going to tell that the iron powder is in the incense when it's being burned? I don't know. Okay, there. I am going to say that is sufficient iron for a fairy fumigant. And the gloves isn't because any of this is really caustic or toxic. It's because it's messy, and the best way to mix it up is with your hands. You can do it like in the kitchen. Wet hand, dry hand. Oh, I think this is working way better than the batch I did the other day. Okay, the juniper was definitely a good idea, because it is definitely doing a good job helping keep that iron sticking to everything too. If you try this at home, I have absolutely no idea how much of anything I've put in. Just what it looked right, and looked about like that. So yeah, this I think this is blended up pretty darn well, and it'll dry out a little too. And all right, look at that. Go and maybe get the jar lid off without breaking the jar. There we go. Wow. I actually really feel like a wizard, kind of. See that was my telekinesis right there. Like, pay no mind that my hand was moving very much along with it. It was I didn't want to. I wanted to be able to catch it. Didn't want to put too much pepper on it, and just send it. Wave of chaos, knocking everything off my desk. So I had to catch it before it was too late. Okay. But yeah, here I am making fairy repellent incense. If that isn't wizard or magely, well then I don't know what is. So there is that. The only thing left to do is clean up some of this and give it a light and see what happens. Okay, it's time to try it out. Got my little charcoal charcoal disc. I bought a whole box of them. They're not really the healthiest thing for you to burn incense on. I'd really like to try the bamboo charcoal and mica that you just let it smolder on. But till I run out, this is what I got. And we are going to light that with the power of lightning. Like a little electric lighter. Look at it. Like, this is as close we got to lightning wands right now, people. This is it. And no, you don't want to touch it. I mean, I'm sure some of you want to touch it. I wanted to touch it. It hurts. And it burns. It's kind of like, feels... Have you ever touched your tongue to like a 9-volt battery? Or rather, had an uncle talk you into touching your tongue to a 9-volt battery? It's kind of like that. Only more. If, speaking of 9-volt batteries, if, I'm just saying, if maybe 1 million people manage to, sign up on my Patreon, my little dollar tier, so, for 1 million patrons, even if you immediately quit. So basically, for $1 million, I'll touch this to my tongue, and we can see what that experience is like for science. And now to wait for the briquette to come to full heat. Okay, I think it's hot. So, or at least it's hot enough. It'll still be building up heat once it gets going. And so, I'm going to just take a little pinch of the incense that really does look like I managed to successfully get it pretty evenly mixed up. So this, all right. And, well, granted, I have more to make, but if this is something that you would be interested in trying out yourself, especially if you think you might have need of it, if you feel that your home is being bothered by a troublesome fairy. I do not believe that mine is, although I do have an item in my sanctum that does not like to stay on the wall, and so I stopped hanging it up, and that will be a story for another video. Oh. Okay, so far so good. It smells you most definitely always, like, the dragon blood is a very, if you haven't experienced it, it's very earthy. I don't want to say pungent, but it's a very earthy, I'll just say it actually has kind of like a musty smell to it. Not unpleasant, but definitely funky. So it is a utilitarian incense. It doesn't smell bad, but you definitely smell like you're burning this with purpose. I'm not getting anything that smells like hot metal. At least as far as I know, and as strong as that smell can be with the dragon's blood. I think both of those smells will really just combine into just dragon's blood plus, I suppose. Yeah, it just you got the dragon's blood. There's kind of like a weird sweet to it, which I know the honey is in there, but I don't know, maybe the honey burns sweet. I've never burned honey before. At least not, I mean, I made an incense before, but again, I've never just burnt honey on its own to know what burning honey smells like. Maybe the juniper? Because there is kind of like a spicy, piney note that would have... yeah, actually, once the other things start smoldering along, they kind of start playing together pretty well with the dragon's blood. This actually worked out way better than my trial batch. So much better, actually. Oh, yeah, that... I'm not just saying it because I'm making it and plan on selling it. Because my other batch, yeah, I mean, if you had a fairy problem and it works, it would probably do the job just fine, but it smelled funky. This actually is kind of pleasant. I feel good about that. Yeah, I'm actually, like I didn't really have high hopes. I figured it was going to end up very much like my previous batch, but this is all right. In fact, you wouldn't even necessarily have to have a fairy problem. Just if you it's got like a woodsy, well, because of the juniper, it just has sort of like a woodsy, smoldering. Kind of like when you have a campfire and you were fortunate enough to have a lot of pine and birch available for your campfire, like the fragrant woods. This is kind of like that. Yeah, it very much smells like a campfire, like in the good ways. Well, all right, there you go. I'll probably maybe tinker with the recipe a little bit, but I'm very happy with whatever amounts that I worked out here. So yeah, there we have it. Castwell's famous fairy repellent incense. I think that's catchy enough. Maybe I'll just stick with that. Give me a top hat and go stand on a corner and sell it, old-timey fashioned. Yeah, all right. So I am going to get my face so close to this smoke, because that just can't be good for someone after a while. And I am going to go, I don't know, wash the smoke off my face, probably. And think about a topic for the next video, and I will see you then.